Now we're going to talk about some of the deals I did. This was our first deal. It was actually out in West Texas, Windchase Apartments. It was 80 units like I talked about. 5.25 we started out on the price tag. It was a momentum play, so it was a B-class property in an A-class area of town. It was actually a corporate seller. Believe it or not, I found this deal on LoopNet. So, you know, a lot of the stuff on LoopNet will be garbage, but sometimes they do pop up, so don't discount that option. We found it on LoopNet, and it was a corporate seller, and that's how they marketed their properties. So we were able to negotiate the situation. I'll never forget on this one. I had to go to Dallas, and I was actually flying there, and we had a layover, and their corporate offices were about 2 miles from the hotel, and we'd been bugging them about the inspection that we'd done. So I went in with this report about that thick, had to go all the way to the top floor of the boardroom, this huge long table with all these chairs and these old men sitting at the end of it looking at you. And I said, put the thing on the table and said, we need $125,000 in repair credits. It got real quiet. They all turned to each other, said, well, just a minute, let us talk, whatever. Okay, you got it. Scared the heck out of me standing in the boardroom asking for $125,000 of these old men looking at you like you're nuts. But you know what? If you don't ask, you don't get. You got to ask, and you got to be persistent like we talked about. How did we raise the money? It was a $1.5 million raise on this, and again, we did it via partners and networking. I went up my own family chain. In this particular deal, we actually, one of the main partners that I had contacts in California who were associated with Hollywood and stuff. And we were able to go up that chain. And the way we brought some of that bigger money in was we brought the one gentleman who had those contacts into the deal and gave him a portion of the deal to do it. And that, therefore, it became legal with all the SEC and stuff. So sometimes you can go up a chain of people. And even though you don't know them, somebody else knows them that you know. And so you can make it all structured to where it works in the way that stays within the rules. Anyway, on this deal, the cap rate was 9.5% in a market where they said that wasn't possible. The cash on cash walking out the door was right at 12, and our overall return in the projections was 21% on a 7-year hold if we held it that long. It was a Fannie Mae loan that we got with 10-year debt at 6.23. That was when the rates were a little bit higher, and the debt coverage ratio was 1.6 on that deal. Still own it. It's a great little property, great market, 4.6% unemployment in that market right now, so it is definitely an emerging market. And we've got a waiting list of about 25 people, and we're now charging them $50 to get on the waiting list for an apartment. And that's just some of the stuff. There's some of the pictures. It was a nice little B-class property. It's big units, about 1,200 square feet, 1,100, 1,200 square feet for the 2 bedrooms. They have their own private patio, all of them, and plenty of parking, quiet area, right down from Walmart, Target, and all that stuff. So. Anyway, again, there was a 9% cash-on-cash return on this. We've distributed it quarterly at about 8% was what we told them out of the chute. 22.3 roughly on the return on investment if we hold it the whole time. Upside in the rental income. When we bought it, we were 100% occupied. So again, you can find deals out there that are cash flowing, that are stable, that are fine. You just got to look. Now, this says 2 to 3. We've actually done about 6 rent increases now in that market. We've been in it about 3 years, and we've raised the rents, like I said, about 6 times. So we've gone from a roughly $5 million value to $7 million in 2.5 years. Competitive advantage, again, the bigger unit size. It's in great condition. It had very little deferred maintenance, though, little tip here. When we did get into the property inspections, we had the guy go through, and we hired the guy, and you usually pay about $50 a door to do an inspection, roughly, so just so you know. And that money's done. When you spend it, you spend it. But the guy that we hired, we told him, you find if there's a screw loose, write it down. And we got this humongous report, and that's that one that I went and plopped on the desk. I mean, so it was so thick and whatever. When we said we wanted $125,000, and they saw all the pictures and the whole thing, they were like, okay. So it does work, but you time it to work for yourself. Oh, this one too, I forgot. We got instant equity. We paid the $5 million for it. We got that $125,000 credit. The day that we closed, we got an appraisal of $5.3 million. So we walked in the door with approximately $300,000 instantly, just because of the deal that we got. The acquisition fee, which Sue talks about, if you go for that, 3%. So we walked out of the closing table with $155,000 in our pocket. How many of you'd like to do that? A little now and then, okay. Oh, and we also got when we calculated in the deposit credits and all the credits that you got at the closing table, we walked in with that $145,000, basically in a paper transaction at the closing. $184,000 is the cash flow, $55,200 after the 70-30 split on the deal. 70% goes to the investors, 30% goes to us. It increased over $1 million in value in little less than 24 months, as I told you. Have happy investors on that one. And we increased the net operating income by $55,190 at this point in time. And if we were to sell it, we'd be somewhere in probably in the $6 to $7 million range on the conservative side of things. Okay. Well, some of the things that we did to the property just to improve the value, a little bit of a value add, is we went in and we renovated the leasing office. Not big stuff, just paint, make it look tidy, make it warm and friendly. People walk in, I want to rent here. We closed the loss to lease gaps. I don't know if you've covered much on loss to lease, but that's basically the difference between the rents that are scheduled and or the rents that are market and the rents that are actually scheduled on their leases. And sometimes that's a bit of a value play. If there's enough room there, you've got room to go in there and start increasing the rents, especially in a strong market. And that can be closed up. You don't pay for that going in, but you can certainly go in there and say, hey, this thing's got a big loss to lease. We can bump these rents and cover that hole. We minimize the lease exposures. That's another thing that's really important. If you end up getting a property that you're going to hold, you want to minimize the lease exposure, meaning you look at your trailing 12s and all that stuff, and you try to make sure that you don't have too many leases coming up in the same month. God forbid you got 80 units and you got 50 of them coming up for renewal in December or something, Spread them out over the year, have your property management do that. We increase the pet deposits. In this market, it's kind of crazy. We get pet deposits, we get pet rent, we get trash reimbursement, utility reimbursement. They pay for pest control. I mean, we're billing almost everything back to the tenants because the market is so strong. We increased the utility bill backs and all that stuff. We reduced the retention incentives from rent discounts to complimentary upgrades or adding a ceiling fan or something like that. And we negotiated revenue sharing with, I forgot about this. On this one, we negotiated, there was a new cable provider that came into town. Here's another little secret that might help you somewhere. And in this particular market, the cable companies were competing with each other. So we went to both cable companies and said, okay, look, if we give you exclusive rights to bring the cable services to this property, what will you do for us? So we were able to give them to give us not only about a $15,000 upfront check for letting them do that, but we get 10% of the revenue that every tenant spends on internet, phone, and cable. And we get a free phone line in the office with free all you want, long distance, and internet. So another way you can change your expenses by thinking outside the box. That's one of the things we did to increase the revenue, because the phone bill, when we took over, was like $250 a month, and it's zero now. So, I mean, do the math. That right there is worth, many, many thousands of dollars in difference for the expenses. Second building, the one right across the street. This is the one that we found from the management company, basically, who was in the area. They told us about it. We got the deal going. 232 units, $11.75 million price tag when we were all done negotiating. A momentum play, again, built in 82. Raised about $3.86 million through a lot of the same channels that we had on the first deal. And we ended up getting a Freddie Mac loan on that sucker for 4.54% fixed for 10 years. By the way, Berkadia Mortgage did it, and guess who owns that one? Warren Buffett. There's some of the facilities, the different things in the property. It's about, 22 buildings, I believe, on that one. And again, this just shows an aerial. You see the bottom one is that first complex we talked about, and then right across the street was the other one. And you can see just some of the stuff in the area, so it made it a great area to buy in. Lowe's, Marriott, everything was right around it. So what did we do there? We came out of the gate on this one because we got the better Freddie Mac loan, being able to offer our investors. We originally told them 8.1, that we thought we'd be able to start paying them out on the cash flow. We actually came out of the gate at 9.7, and now we're at about 13. So they're loving us. In fact, now they're calling me saying, you got another deal? You got another deal? I was like, sure. 19.5 annual investor return, we thought at the beginning. It's even more than that now. Good interest rate. The occupancy was at 96% when we took over. It was a nice competitive property again, because out there they had the 100% washer and dryer connections in all the units, and that's part of the reason for the utility bill back. $419,000 acquisition fee we got on that at closing. Yeah, almost $500,000. We had to split it 4 ways, but that's okay. I cried all the way to the bank. $200,000 seller credit, again, for repairs, because we did the same strategy. We went in and told them, look, everything's wrong with the place. Oh, little tidbit on this one, by the way. If you ever get a nice big property package that has, property inspection, and you get the big package, try not to let the property manager get it or anybody on site, because what happened in this particular deal was she didn't mean anything bad, but when the bank came to do their inspections, she gave them a copy of that. So that ended up costing us about $150,000 in repairs. It probably wouldn't have been that expensive, but because she gave them that, it was a whoops. So FYI. $451,000 a year that thing cash flowed at closing. $113,000 for our 25% share of the deal. This is the last one I did, which was actually in December. And we closed in December. It's in Macon, Georgia. And it's 152 units. $3 million was the price tag. Actually, let me clarify that. We started out negotiating, and we got a $2.85 million contract on that. And this kind of whole story behind this one. But when we found out about the property, first of all, the broker called me, because I'd been working with this particular broker. And he called me, and he said, well, I've got this deal, and it's off market, and I'm only calling you. It's a deal for you. I said, okay, great. Let me call. So then I looked at it, and I'm like, okay, I know somebody who lives in that market, and I'd be interested in partnering with that person because it's that person's backyard. So let me give that person a call. So I picked up the phone. Hey, what's going on? By the way, do you know this complex? Yeah, the broker just sent me the property package on it. I'm the only one he called, yeah. Anyway, we put our heads together, got the deal, and we discovered in doing some of the due diligence on this particular property that the current owner was actually a corporate seller. Another little tidbit piece of information. If you can get relationships with some of these corporate owners, the big owners that are across the country, or big management companies that own their own properties, sometimes they sell off their assets. And if you can get a relationship going there, sometimes you can pick those assets off before they go to the broker. Just a thought. So anyway, we found this corporate seller.
Can I just ask you a question?
Sure.
I'm getting a little bit lost in
Okay.
repeating the information, so I need to get it. With the acquisition fee you said you divided it by 4 people. Is that because you had 3 partners, or were you referring to your investors getting it?
No, it was the 4 partners, the three other partners and myself that owned that deal. We got the 25% carve out, and of that 25%, it was divided basically 4 ways. And then the acquisition fee was divided the 4 ways as well, because there's 4 of us in the deal. And the reason there's 4 is because myself and the partner in that deal were working together. We had to bring in the 2 other people to have the net worth, because it was a $9 million loan, and I no way had $9 million at that point in time of net worth. So I had to bring in the people and give some of it away to be able to do that. So I thought I was going to get in trouble. I don't know.
Allowed to ask any questions unless they come up to the mic and ask them. Thank you.
This has been a customer service. Let me see on this one. So again, this kind of came through a broker relationship that had been established before on the Cherry Tree Hill. And what kind of happened with this deal was the corporate owner had owned it for 25 years, and they'd pretty much depreciated the heavens out of it and all that. And they were kind of at the point where they were ready to sell. Some of those investors that they had in the deal, because that's what they did, was syndicate this years ago, wanted to come out of the deal. And so when we started going in and negotiating the whole price, we actually ended up with a price tag of $2.85 million. But what happened is when we went to get the financing on the deal, because they had placed about 27 units of special needs housing, for lack of a better way to put it, and this particular agency would pay a block sum of rent every month for those 27 units. So most of the traditional lenders didn't like that. We were having a real hard time getting a loan on that, because they didn't like the fact that 27 units, they felt it was too much exposure. So we went back and forth and went to different lenders and tried for a long time trying to get the loan. And what ended up happening was they were getting down to the point where their loan on the place was going to balloon, and they needed to pay it off. And we just couldn't get the lending done in time. So one weekend I'm sitting there, I get a phone call from one of the owners on my cell phone. It's like, Alan, I need to talk to you. I'm like, uh-oh, here we go. He's going to cancel the deal. And it's like, would you care if we went ahead and just did a $2 million seller financing loan for about 18 months? And you guys can then really work hard to get out of this. Would you care if we would do that at a higher interest rate? So we did the numbers and found out, yeah, it's still cash flowing at about 13.5% even with that loan. So yeah, I think I can do that. So we ended up with a $2 million seller financing loan. So when people say it's not out there, or brokers tell you, oh, you can't get seller financing, ha. That's all I have to say. It is out there. Is it a dime a dozen? No. And this was kind of a unique circumstance, but it does happen. Anyway, we're working on right now. In fact, I need to corner Eric tomorrow, find out where we're at with the refinance on this. Again, that's 152 units. We're in the process of doing a few little improvements. Again, we're improving the office to try to give a better feeling when people come in because it's got some crappy carpet and stuff in there. And we found that on some of the 2-bedroom units, if we upgrade them a little bit, and this is minor upgrades like changing a countertop and putting knobs on the cabinets, the silly little things like that, we can get about $40 more per unit for doing that. So that should be part of our value play on this, and that's what I just talked about. Another thing that we found out is there's an old tennis court there, and that's actually an insurance problem for us. So we're in the process of finding out how much it'll take to get that out of there and just turn it into like a barbecue area, outdoor barbecue area, because should improve our insurance premium costs by doing that. So we're evaluating what the cost would be to do that. Anyway, same thing. We came out the door to our investors of 8.5% cash on cash projected. We've actually gotten them already to 8.9, and that's been in 6 months, so that's good. 20% annual return over the holding time, depending on if we refinance now, though, this has kind of changed, because if we get the refi at like the 4 point whatever rates that they are at right now, we're actually probably going to jump to about a 17% cash on cash return on this thing as soon as we close that loan, which is awesome. Immediate equity. Now, here's one of the things I said. We contracted for 2.85. I was able to finagle out of the broker because there was previously a buyer on this, and it fell apart, and that's how it came back to us. This was a deal that my partner in this had seen about a year and a half earlier and bid on. Some other person came in, bid on it, and then that deal fell apart, and that's when it came back to us as an off-market deal. So, again, a little tidbit. Put those little things when you're looking at property in a file, and go back and call that broker a few months later or a few weeks later or whatever the deal is, and just see, is that deal still there? What's going on? Did you got something else? Because you never know. Sometimes something happens, and if you just happen to be there at the right time, you might get an opportunity that you didn't even realize was there. So that's kind of what happened on this one. But anyway, we were able to finagle out of him because they had a copy from the previous buyer that it appraised at 2.95. So we already had $100,000 of instant equity in this deal, just walking in, buying it for 2.8. Well, what we ended up doing, though, is we actually talked the seller into writing the contract for $3 million. The reason we did that, it did increase the taxes a little bit, but it gave us a little bit more room with that whole refinance situation because it's kind of a short timeline with the 18-month loan. And so we wanted to make sure that if HUD or Fannie Mae or whoever we go for the loan comes in and says, well, what was your closing statement since you only bought this a year ago, we have the price high enough that we shouldn't have to come up with any more cash. Even if it comes in at 70% loan to value, there should be enough room there that we're not coming up with any more cash. So sometimes you got to work with the sellers or whatever and maneuver your contracts to where it'll work down the line. Think ahead. Not only the exit strategy, but okay, if, like I said, on this one we were thinking, well, gosh, if they do 70% loan to value and they give us a hard time, or even 65, I think we could even do 65% loan to value on this and still be fine. So that's why we did it that way. We've been able to keep it at 92%. Same thing, some value plays on the units. We got $150,000 seller credit on paper again because we had them raise the price and give the credit. So we didn't come up with any money. It was just a paper transaction. $85,000 acquisition fee. Anybody want one of those? And 127 plus of cash flow at closing. It's actually more up to almost 135 now. And there was only 2 partners in this deal that are on my side of the fence. It's myself and my other partner on this deal, and we get 35% of the deal. So, and actually, I left some of the acquisition fee in it because I really didn't need it. So that gives me almost a 40% with my partner ownership of this property. So we've got a big controlling interest in it, which is great. Love that picture. Sometimes in this business, you got to be persistent, like we talked about. I just love that face. I'm going to make it if it kills me, you know? And I'll tell you, like Sue did, if I can do it, someone who is a flight attendant, you know, making $30,000 a year at best, can do this, you could do this. Trust me, it's not brain surgery. Sometimes you just got to think outside the little thing that's between the noodle here, work on that. Hard work, you got to hang in there. When you run into a wall, well, look for a door, look for a window. Don't keep running into the wall, find a way around it. Follow up, follow up, follow up. Did I mention follow up? Okay. That's very important in this business. Then don't forget to go back to your brokers or your investors or your contacts on a regular basis. You know, don't just always email and stuff, but sometimes it's nice to do a call. Hey, Mr. Broker, and try to actually get the person. Don't leave the voicemail if you can help it. Hey, Mr. Broker, remember me? Hey, just wanted to talk to you. Are you doing okay? That's a relationship building thing. Be prudent, patient, and persistent. Do what Sue tells you to do. And sometimes it's good if you feel you need that little extra nudge. Get yourself a coach or get yourself a mentor. Maybe there's somebody in your RIA group or something that has been doing this for a long time and you can learn something from them. Most people are more than happy to share with you, especially about themselves. You know, most people love talking about themselves. Of course, not me, but that's a really important thing I think you need to do in any part of your life is get a mentor. That's one of the best things that I ever did was do the coaching program. Not because I didn't have some knowledge. That you heard my story. I started back in '93. But it got to a point where I didn't have the knowledge from where I needed to take it at that point forward. So I felt it was worth the money and it worth the time and the energy to take that next step and get myself a mentor and get myself a coach. And that's when I got Miss Sue, and well, here we are. So understand who your clients are, again. And make sure when you're looking for your clients, investors, whoever you're dealing with, find out what they want. Don't try to sell them what you want. Find out what they want and need. Because if you find out what your investors need and what their tolerance level is, then you can probably find the property or the deal that will fit that scenario. And, that's one big mistake I think a lot of people make in this business is they come in and they think, well, I'm going to go talk to this whatever hedge fund group, but that hedge fund group might want a 10% return. But if you're bringing them an 8% return and they want 10, square peg, round hole, doesn't work. So, make sure you're finding out what your investors and what your partners and what your people in your world want so that you can try to meet those needs if at all possible and match the colors. So, work with and learn from the best. Again, a coach, a mentor. Partners are okay. And believe it or not, I run into this all the time, where, especially in boot camp world, where, I want to do a deal myself. Well, I get that. I really do. And it's nice to be able to own a big portion of your deal. But the reality is, especially starting out, you're going to probably need to have partners. It's okay. You might want to qualify them a little bit and make sure that you're working with people that you jive with. But, it's okay to have partners. Build those relationships because at some point in time, especially if you get bigger, you're going to need them anyway. There's, when we did that 232 unit deal, there's no way I could have done a $9 million loan. I had to bring those people in. So it's just part of the way the thing works at this point in time. Now, maybe at some point in time, I'm still not to the $9 million level, but we're working on it. Become a transactional engineer and a specialist in what you do. I like to call it deal junkie. For me, this is like a real estate crack. It's like, I gotta find a deal. You got one? So, be that person who likes to put together those deals and become that transactional engineer and control the deal the best you can. Make sure that you keep control of your deals, in my opinion, because you don't want to get into a situation where somebody can do something to you or whatever. Try to control the situation as best you can so you can control your destiny. And now I would like to leave it with, what's going to happen? It's you who has to make it happen. If you have a coach, it's not your coach. Your coach can be there to motivate you and help you, but you're the one who has to take action. You're the one that has to make this happen. And I congratulate everyone in this room for doing this because you're here making something happen, learning how to change your lives. And trust me, you can do it. Be a due diligence freak. Make sure you go through all the numbers when you do have a deal and really dot the I's and cross the T's, because there are sellers out there, gee, go figure, who do weird things. I just had a student, in fact, that went and did a property inspection, and they said that they were at a certain occupancy level or something, and the guy actually rented furniture and staged 4 units as if they were occupied and said that the rents were there, trying to hide it. Can you imagine? Went through all that trouble, and like, you're not going to get caught? Are you really? So people do stuff occasionally, so be a due diligence freak and a deal junkie. Focus on what makes you money. And focus on relationships and team building. I cannot say that enough, because that is what's going to change your world. You do have all the tools. Right now, today, just with this education, you have all the tools that you need. And I would also say, don't think that you have to know everything before you start taking action. Because you can have all the book knowledge in the world, but if you don't get off the backside, you're never going to see the front side. Okay? Take action. And of course, live, laugh, love, and learn. You could take it from a 4-plex, a 5-plex, a 10-plex, wherever you're comfortable, but do something. Take action. You can do it. In closing, I like another of Warren. I seem to resonate on him, huh? But somebody is sitting in a shady tree today because somebody planted a tree a long time ago. This business is not only relationship related, but you've got to plant the seeds. You reap what you sow. You don't plant the seed, you're not going to get the plant. You plant, an avocado seed, you're not going to get a peach tree. Hello, so work on planting that garden. And this is one of my favorite statements. Life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the moments that take your breath away. So get out there, take action, keep your focus, and learn to create a world that will take your breath away. I wish you all the best. I thank you guys so much.